is a trading platform for like very fast trading with Bitcoin. And I'm working on a new tech which is called DLC for discrete log contracts, and I'm working on DLC markets, which is a new project for OTC for institutional. And it will be it's a project that try to make the trading as much as self-custodial as possible. So meaning that at all times you are in control of your funds from the moment you open the position to the end, even with during the contract. So it's exciting. And me, I actually I have a PhD in applied math, and it was not on cryptography but more on AI, and I start to be in Bitcoin like 2 years ago, and I have been hired by Ellen Markets to work on the DLC subject. So yeah, that's my background. I also did a lot of podcasts last year, but currently it's a bit on resume. So.
Okay, you know what, Théo? Yesterday, because I didn't know you before, so we were introduced by a common friend, and I didn't know you, to be honest. But I spoke about you to few people yesterday at Proof of Talk, French people, and that's amazing how people told me, really, this guy is the best tech guy about Bitcoin in France. I said, really? So I'm really, really happy to meet you this morning, and you're a real crack, as they say. Welcome, Pantamis. Maybe now, Dan, you're founder of Radix DLT, focused on creating a scalable and secure infrastructure for decentralized finance. Can you, the same, explain your background and what is Radix in a few words?
Yeah, sure. So I started off as a game developer many years ago. Then I moved into mobile applications, mobile payments, and then discovered Bitcoin. Played around with Bitcoin a little bit and realized that some things were going to be an issue in the long term, such as scale and centralization and mining efficiency and all these things. And so started the Radix project over a decade ago. Took it quite slow. The focus was primarily research for a large number of years. And now we're building out that research into a L1, which focuses on user experience, user security, developer experience, and extreme scalability. And when I say extreme, just a couple of days ago in our testnet for the next rollout on our roadmap, that network achieved over 200,000 swaps a second. So smart contract swaps, 200,000 a second. So we are getting there on all three of those areas.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. It's your first time on GM Web3. I knew you a bit since you made some amazing spaces with our friends DB Crypto and Radix. So yeah, I'm very happy to welcome you this morning on GM Web3 for this exciting discussion. Now let's, Robert, co-developer at MultiversX, working on a lot of things, but especially sovereign chains that enhance interoperability and scalability. Robert, same challenge, a bit of yourself and about MultiversX and what you do there.
Hello, everyone. I have started actually my development year started at Google doing graphics. And after that, I went into AI, self-driving cars, until I've met Benjamin and Lucian to start building on Elrond in 2018. And since there, I'm here right now, renamed, or 2 years ago, renamed to MultiversX. We are sharded ecosystem with a bunch of innovation working, and right now we released our first versions of sovereign chains, in which people can take everything we've been developed since the last few years and launch their own chains, which are also interconnected to multiple ecosystems.
Okay, very cool. You were at Proof of Talk, Robert. So I think you spoke about sovereign chain, sharding, and scalability for 2 days to many people. What was the main topic of Proof of Talk, the main narrative that you talked about there?
We talked about a lot of things there with different people, with different topics. There were a lot of business related discussions mostly. There were a lot of institutions there, banks looking into the space, what they can do. Then gaming industry was there having a few discussions, and they were actually saying out loud that everybody is using sharding, so they don't understand why there is so much hate against sharding. But maybe here with Dan, we had some good debates last week against non-sharding people.
Mm-hmm. From
Um,
Solana, we can say.
yeah, from Solana at that time. And a lot about like how to run sovereign chains, what is scalability, how to create applications. These were the main topics we have discussed.
Okay, so let's maybe start the discussion with a small introduction, and after, guys, I prepared some like questions, of course, but feel free. The audience, the guests, my friends, of course. Feel free if you want maybe to go somewhere else, if you want to add something. Maybe I did not think about everything about the topic since I'm not a tech guy, but I did my homework this morning. That's why I just slept 3 hours. But yeah, feel free to propose some other issues. So first, Bitcoin faces challenges such as slow transaction speeds, high fees, limited smart contract capabilities, and like layer 2 solutions aims to address these issues by processing transactions off-chain, thereby enhancing scalability and functionality. So it's a crucial aspect that can enable the development of decentralized applications that can settle on Bitcoin. And our discussion today will explore various aspects of Bitcoin L2 solutions, including app chain, the use of server chains. We'll speak, of course, about Lightning Network and maybe the other, we can say, Bitcoin L2. We'll speak also about something if you are aware of, and I'm sure you are, Opcat, which is the opcode that was originally part of Bitcoin scripting, and that is proposed to come back to enable a smart contract and more possibilities on Bitcoin. So, first of all, and that's my question that I will start with, if you agree, guys. Do you think Bitcoin will compete Ethereum as a settle layer for options? For dApps, sorry. So who wants maybe to start about this? And of course we'll see where it leads.
So maybe I can start about this. So
Yes.
Currently, as you talk about the Lightning Network, which would be what we would call as Bitcoiners the main layer 2 who make it into Bitcoin, really. And I think it's a good idea to start by just saying that when Bitcoiners talks about L2, they are maybe a bit more severe about the security guarantees than how other would call something an L2. In the case of Bitcoin, L2 is just a way to organize off-chain transactions. That means that you always, when you use a L tool, you always have at your disposition, you always have a transaction that you can publish on the blockchain to claim your Bitcoin on the L1. So there is no, it should not be confused with what we call sidechain, where like the transactions are batched by some guy who promised to return the Bitcoin, where we can verify that all the transactions they assume in their ledger is valid and so on. So it's really different in terms of security hypothesis, meaning that you should be able just by yourself unilaterally and without having to ask anything to anyone to be able to claim your Bitcoin at any time if you have any doubt about the security of the L2. And so Lightning Networks make it, but Lightning Networks is mostly for payments because the Lightning Network has some, it requires to synchronize a lot of people to do a payment, like certain people, what we call the payment routing in the Lightning Network. And for the application you talked about, it is more about programmability, so meaning being able to have some kind of smart contract on Bitcoin. And you have some kind of L2 project that exists for long but didn't make it for now to do some smart contracts. And the main example I have in mind when you talked about programmability on Bitcoin through layer 2, it's something called RGB. So RGB, because it's kind of inspired by colored coin, which is a very old protocol to create some kind of token on Bitcoin. But in RGB, you are able to create some contract that you can enforce on-chain and verify on-chain, and it can be used for many things. You can create tokens, obviously, but there is some kind of perspective where you can even go to having some stable coin, having some automatic market maker and stuff like that. But it's really far away for now. It didn't make it into Bitcoin for now. And it's also compatible with Lightning too. You can do some payment on RGB layers through Lightning. But for now, it's really small. So for now, we don't have really something which solves the programmability, the possibility of programmability on Bitcoin is quite limited. You have to use the Bitcoin scripts, and you talked about OpCat, but this is a topic for later, so I just there.
No, and thank you very much for this. It's important to clarify the terms to make sure everyone's talking about the same thing. Maybe Robert, what do you think is the point of verifying the integrity of a transaction on Bitcoin rather than Ethereum or even MultiversX? Because this is what L2 Bitcoin is about.
First, I would agree with Pantamis. In order about an L2 should have the properties that the user by itself can retract their funds. That should be a fact. But if we look at L2bit.org right now, there are not so many L2s even in the Ethereum space, which market themselves as L2, who offer this kind of security. But if you want to be purist and if you want to go into this direction, I totally agree that an L2 should do that. But until you get there, you may do some compromises. In Ethereum or in MultiversX, you can do this by, for example, you can write a sidechain, and the sidechain is creating settlement on these general smart contract platforms. And through this settlement, there is a possibility for the user at always to use a so-called exit tree, in which he posts a transaction on the L1 network and he gets his funds back on the L1 network. Now, this is quite impossible to do for more complex cases in Bitcoin because of the limitation of Bitcoin scripts and limitation of how many Bitcoin script operations you can do in one single transaction. But I think if you start with a sidechain and some multi-party computation, relatively big multi-party computation for getting in and getting out, and when opcat is added or other operations are added, then you can offer these kind of securities as well to the users, and the users would, at that time, your sidechain would, in some sense, acquire the security of the Bitcoin network as well. That's one of the big differences between being able to program verification and exit trees versus relying on the Bitcoin script.
Yeah, thank you, Robert, for this. Dan, Radix is more than a wallet. It's also a way to program things, to make transactions, and to make maybe DeFi easier. What's your position about the connection between DeFi and Bitcoin? Do you think we will see a DeFi ecosystem on Bitcoin, maybe through L2 Bitcoin?
No. So I'm gonna be the devil's advocate in the room. So I'm not a fan of L2s as a scalability solution anyway, because the way the security guarantees and the decentralization, liveness, all the proof stuff, you just have a lot of tricky surface area in terms of security that you have to deal with. And sharding, in my opinion, is a much better route for scalability. There are some legitimate use cases for.
I'm sure Robert agree.
Yeah.
I totally agree. But the industry is what at the current moment. So sovereign chains should somehow connect the industries and at least, let's say, somehow finish all these infrastructure wars, and then let's focus on users.
Right. Well, okay. So I've got a bit of a longish point, right? So L2's certain use cases fine, but as a scalability solution, they're better solutions. Bitcoin was on the course where it would still be able to compete, right? When Satoshi gave us Bitcoin, and the intention that he laid, the foundation that he laid, if Bitcoin had have stayed on that course, then Bitcoin would have had plenty of scalability to compete, at least now. Yeah, maybe not so much in the future, but at least now it would have had enough scalability to compete. Small micropayment transactions would have been fine because the block sizes would have been larger, so they would have had to scale. Micropayments, you're fine processing those with zero confirmation because you have the mempool, and providing that the network has 51% or more of honest actors, then at some point that microtransaction will be included in a block somewhere. And so an L2 wasn't really needed, right? And even in terms of execution, the stack-based programmability of Bitcoin could easily have been extended via some of the reserved opcode spaces that were there to have a second execution engine within Bitcoin that was Turing complete, aka like Ethereum, right? So you could have maintained the legacy stack-based language for legacy transactions, and you could have extended the execution capabilities of Bitcoin with a second execution layer, and that could have been triggered by some of the reserved opcodes that were there. But unfortunately for Bitcoin, since Satoshi stepped away, it's kind of lost a leg, right? Like the block size debate just ended its ability to be really competitive over the long term. And so now you have all these L2 solutions that are trying to sit on top of Bitcoin. But by losing that leg that it had, in terms of its ability to scale over time, its ability to extend the execution engine and have different flavors of execution, Turingness, stack-based, etc., we can't do that anymore with it. So it's kind of been pushed out of the market of competitiveness, and all it really does well, and all it can really do well over the long term, is be a strong store of value, in my opinion. I think Bitcoin will be important in DeFi as an ecosystem, because it does have some very nice properties. But in terms of DeFi actually taking place on the Bitcoin network, I don't think it'll be able to compete with emerging technologies over the long term.
Okay, thank you, Dan. I have a question for the three of you now. Just let me know which one wants to answer first. Starknet, Starkware, Osmosis, MultiversX presented different strategies to allow developers to choose whether to settle on Bitcoin or on different chains. So what do you think, guys, of this strategy of taking advantage of decentralization and security of Bitcoin network? And do you think it will compete with Ethereum in the next few years? And that's, I think, a good start maybe to speak about the challenge, the limits, and maybe the opportunities of such a thing. Yeah, Dan?
Yeah, so this actually fits into very nicely what I was just saying, right? So if any of you have kind of dug through all of Satoshi's old posts and stuff, Satoshi was a supporter of Bitcoin being a kind of network security layer for other kind of cryptocurrency networks, right? So you could backstop the security of a second network, like let's call, let's say Litecoin, right? Just for argument's sake. Litecoin could backstop its security onto the Bitcoin blockchain. So it would inherit the security of the Bitcoin blockchain, could do its own things, would also inherit some of the security. Now, that wasn't necessarily an L2 as such. It was more a interoperability thing between what would be Bitcoin and Litecoin. But the kind of the viewpoint here was, why would all these networks compete for security and decentralization when they can kind of merge mine, I guess, right, with Bitcoin and use the Bitcoin network as a means to backstop their security and decentralization. So it gets close to what an L2 is, but in the same way, it's also very different. There's some nuance there, if that makes sense.
Okay. Robert, can you maybe start by explaining your strategy to promote developers maybe to develop L2 Bitcoin via sovereign chains? And about the competition with, the biggest layer one at the moment, Ethereum as a settlement layer.
I think that Lucian in our sovereign demo had a good word that there was Ethereum appeared in 2016, but there was no one big bridge between or one really heavily researched created good bridge between Bitcoin and Ethereum, because Ethereum wanted to take the crown and to be the actual settlement layer for everybody. And by not integrating Bitcoin, not having the Bitcoin liquidity on Ethereum, they somehow fighted it. And I don't think it's necessarily it's a good thing. So and now everybody is trying to settle on Ethereum, but these kind of settlements, people right now are moving more towards side chains than settling, because it is just faster and it makes much more sense economically, and that the current place people don't care about like so much about security or decentralization, as we see a lot of people using Coinbase or other, let's say, centralized stuff a lot. The strategy we take with MultiversX is that you can take the sovereign chains in which you can create a general compute platform which scales, connect it directly to Bitcoin. Right now, the solution we are looking for is the multi-party computation run by all the validators, Here we could talk about like economic security, who stakes and what stakes, but let's say it's not so important at what in the current moment. Then you could use the funds, ordinals, Bitcoin, and program everything. For example, in WASM. I am saying WASM because, in my perspective, it's much far ahead of what EVM can offer at any time. So in this sense, you can bring WASM execution to Bitcoin, which means that you can have the most complex operations over that existing liquidity, which is pretty huge. But I think that in order to make this a successful thing, uh, these kind of solutions have to be somehow approved by, not approved, but let's say supported by a minority or by a group from the Bitcoin ecosystem. So it shouldn't be like aliens coming to Bitcoin, but Bitcoin trying out new things.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Pantamis, you are um, a researcher at LN Market. What's the state of the art in terms of L2, and what's the limits of a Lightning network? And do you think one day Bitcoin will become really a settlement layer? And what about the competition with Ethereum? Is it relevant or not at all?
It's a good question. We already talked about Lightning Network. So I would say that Lightning Network is currently the state of the art in terms of L2 who make it, meaning that it's used a lot. We use it to do payments with merchant and so on. It works really well. So I guess the scalability issue is more about programmability possibilities on Bitcoin, and it's a hard topic. And currently, we have several proposals. Like, for example, there was BitVM, which is a kind of hack in the script of Bitcoin to allow yourself to program your own VM somewhat in the script, but it's very limited in terms of pooling liquidity together. And I talked about RGB, and RGB could be really a solution to kind of do what Ethereum can do on Bitcoin in a kind of with other token not than Bitcoin, but using Bitcoin security as a technology. I think it's also important to say that being able to settle, meaning going out of a sidechain with Bitcoin, is not something I would call the Bitcoin layer 2. And I think that when you talked about Starknet allowing people to get Bitcoin from the Starknet network, it's just a kind of economics saying, yeah, okay, you can have some Bitcoin instead of being forced to go Ethereum. But somewhat it does not say that the security of Starknet increase because you can just get your payout in Bitcoin. And when I say, for example, that RGB has the security of Bitcoin, it's really because its RGB transaction must be either a Bitcoin layer 1 transaction, either a Bitcoin Lightning transaction. So it's really Bitcoin transaction under the hood, and it's not the case with Starknet. And then you have all this proposal about BitVM. You also have something which is called ARC, which is a new protocol that was created last year, which use what is called covenants, which are opcode that must be added in Bitcoin to allow this kind of application where it facilitates the process of having some pre-signed transaction. And it can be used to do this kind of service provider to allow people to do payment with each other. And we can imagine to have some kind of programmability on these things too. But yeah, I mean, that's not really, there's OPCAT too, but I mean, for now, you have some proposal, but they have some difficulty with pooling liquidity together. It's already a hard topic in Lightning to handle the liquidity. And for now, we don't have a lot of solutions that try to provide this liquidity pool that we have in other protocol, because it's in Bitcoin, we consider that to be really self-custodian, then you must have some keys to allow the transaction to go through. So the issue is coordination between many people, all the people in the liquidity pool, which is kind of hard. So for now, we consider that we can't do that. And so you don't have much research about it. I think it's important that to understand that all the solutions we talked about just before, that imply some kind of reduction in terms of security and decentralization. For example, in Starknet, it's not miner, but it's sequencer that are the problem, because you need the sequencer to include your transaction in kind of validity proof it will produce. You also need to trust that there is no other conflicting transaction in a conflicting validity proof that the sequencer didn't show to you, but plan to show you later, so that your payment from which you receive money cancel. So you have some security trade-off everywhere, and it's just that in Bitcoin we don't accept any security trade-off, and so that's why you don't have this kind of all-in-one solution where we have some kind of programmability where you are Turing-like complete, but not really, because you can't. If you were Turing complete, then you have the halting problem, so you cannot really do anything. Your network can just crash at the first transaction that creates an infinity loop. So this is hard, and maybe we will have that in Bitcoin, but in many years. I think something like 10 years would be like somewhat approximate statement.
Okay, guys. Of course, if you want to rebound on that someone said just before, feel free to do it. Okay, and really, Dan and Robert, if you want to answer Pantamis, or okay, feel free to do it. And if not, I would like to talk about interoperability, which is clearly the most important issue for entering, exiting, and re-entering an ecosystem, aggregating liquidity, facilitating and securing exchanges, encouraging adoption by masking the notion of a particular blockchain, different wallets, and so on. So what role can Bitcoin play in interoperability? And maybe one of you can tell us if there is any solution today that are interoperable with Bitcoin without a bridge, or if it doesn't exist. Who wants to start?
I don't think there are solutions right now for this kind of things, and I don't see that Bitcoin to be an interoperability at the current state. I get what Pantamis had said about Bitcoin, and but I think that how the industry and the history of technology went through, it's quite sad that Bitcoin did not pursue with all speed the advancement of technologies and consensus and processing and everything, and did not create a, let's say, a better uh, base layer for everything. If it would have created, I think we would be at a different stage of the market, and then more people would focus on developing applications and not other infrastructure. In order to be a, let's say, in this sense, an interoperability layer, I think sovereign chains with the multi-VM support and with the native cross-chain operations can create the so-called chain abstraction for every single person, where he just uses one wallet somewhere, let's say, in on the mainnet or on one of the sovereign chains, which is, let's say, interoperable with several several such several chains, and then from there he makes the puts his intent of execution different things, and then because of the native cross-chain operations, those are resolved by the processes built into the protocol, run by all the validators, and then the trust assumption, let's say it's at the validator level, which when they will got the ZK verifiers as well, then you will have those kinds of mathematical proofs as well.
Okay.
But
Dan?
just one more thing about like why we need still more nodes and why we need still not only one sequencer or 10 sequencers, but we need nodes is in order to create the permissionless nature, no censorship resistant nature of a chain, which Bitcoin have really well created by having thousands of nodes through which you can push your transactions, and somebody will put it on the chain. This is one of the aspects for which we should really stay, because if we go into a situation where there are only a few sequencers for a set of operations, then it's pretty easy to censor everything. When there are thousands, you can't do anything.
Okay, I see, Pantamis, you agree with Robert.
Yeah. I think it's the sequencer is kind of like being able to mine in Bitcoin. You know, with Bitcoin, you can mine as soon as you have your own node. No one can impeach you to mine. You can always mine block, even if you have a very small hash rate. You would say it's insignificant, but at least you can, in the case where the network is attacked and you don't trust the longest chain, and because it's censored, so you try to invalidate some block in it and do your own chain if you need, in case of social attack, very strong. But the thing with sequencer is that if you are not, because generally you use sequencer and ZK proof and so on to scale your chain, meaning that you will do more transaction than what the normal user can handle with his machines. And so generally the sequencer is very expensive to run by nature, because there are too much transaction for a normal machine to run it. And so that's where centralization may happen, because now you need a lot of a data center to be able to process the transaction and create proof by yourself if you are censored by other sequencer. So I think that's where we are as Bitcoiner, we see it as a reduction of security, because now if you really have no way to send your transaction in the sequencer proof in the chain, then you have to do it yourself, and you actually can't. So that's, you could say, okay, that's kind of extreme and so on. Yeah, but that's really where we are in Bitcoin. We really think about all extreme cases. And so this is why you don't have much research for now in this kind of topic. Even if, as I said, there are people working on kind of hack in the script of Bitcoin to kind of allow this kind of things to happen in some kind of sidechain. And about the interoperability, just to make it quick, we have some kind of interoperability in Bitcoins. For example, if you go to Bolt's exchange, you can exchange Lightning Bitcoins with on-chain Bitcoins. So this is a kind of interoperability, and you would say, okay, so it's Bitcoins against Bitcoin. What's the point? So this is interesting for liquidity management in case of Lightning. But a more interesting use case is when you can do some atomic swaps. So you have recently, for example, Samurai Wallet made an implementation of atomic swap with Monero. So you can swap token between each other as if it were as trustless somewhat, meaning that programmatically guaranteed that you will have your coin if you send yours, and we can do that already in the case of Bitcoin with some kind of other chain like Monero. And we have there is no problem into generalizing this kind of protocol to more chains. For example, if you have some RGB token or Taproot asset or stuff like that, you could have some atomic swap protocol to exchange token between one another. The issue be compared to what you can have in Ethereum is that you don't have liquidity pool, meaning that you have to find yourself your counterparty when you want to do an atomic swap. So this is the issue, because generally in Ethereum you have some liquidity pool against which you will do your swap between tokens. And people in the pool are not actually there. It's kind of managed programmatically, and this is where it's scaled in terms of economic. But we have some like primitive interoperability in Bitcoin too, in that sense. That's all I want to say about that.
Okay, thank you, Pantamis. What's your take on this, Dan?
My apologies. I had to take a call when you asked the question. So any
Okay,
chance?
it was about interoperability mainly, and about maybe the actual the current solution of interoperability related to Bitcoin, and also about the issue about this. I mean, it's important, in my opinion, to be able to go on an ecosystem and to be able to exit and to come back and to maybe aggregate liquidity and to make exchanges and transactions seamless and so on. And what's the situation about Bitcoin, and what's the potential of it in terms of interoperability?
Okay, I think Bitcoin is very important in terms of interoperability, right? Because if you think about the liquidity that Bitcoin has, the amount of off ramp and on ramp that you can do with Bitcoin, it is by far the most accessible cryptocurrency. It's quite easy these days to on and off ramp to Bitcoin, and you know, with the advancements in kind of bridges and all those kind of things, it's quite easy now to also get value from Bitcoin into another ecosystem if there is something there that you want to interact with, a particular application or an opportunity, right? So I think this is another one of the very strong use cases that Bitcoin has, and it's a great position for Bitcoin to be in, right? It can, at least for the foreseeable future, be the kind of bedrock of the access to the traditional financial system, and the ability to move in and out of crypto and fiat and traditional finance via Bitcoin. It's quite frictionless. So it's very important that the entire ecosystem has at least some level of interoperability with Bitcoin, or at least a route to be able to get there, right? So if you want an L2 on Ethereum, then you can go from the L2 to Ethereum, from Ethereum over a bridge to Bitcoin, and then from Bitcoin to your bank account, let's say, right? And that sounds like a complicated set of steps, but progress has been made across all of those areas where, from a user perspective, it could simply be just a click of a button. So it's a nice position that Bitcoin is in, and it's something that I think about quite often, and the team at Radix as well, on how can we leverage that unique position over the long term to improve DeFi for users.
Okay, thank you, Dan. We will finish this discussion in like 10 minutes. So maybe we can speak about your current project, and maybe it will lead us to a new discussion. Dan, maybe to start, about Radix. What's the main challenge for in a technical way for Radix, and in which terms you manage to address them?
Our main focus from a technical point of view is the kind of three pillars that I mentioned at the beginning, right? The user experience, the developer experience, and then scale. And we spent a lot of time researching scale over a decade on how do you scale to billions of users and IoT devices and all these things, right? But our rollout of the network is kind of back to front that you would expect. So scale is actually the last thing that we're going to deploy on the roadmap, because what's more important over the short to medium term is developer experience and user experience, right? And by those things, I mean that it's difficult to write a secure smart contract in Solidity, because you can make easy mistakes that result in reentrancy attacks and all these other things, right? And without getting too much into the weeds of all that. And so one of our areas of focus has been, okay, how do you improve that experience so that a developer spends more time building their idea rather than making sure that they've implemented their idea correctly, right? Because obviously security is important for the success of your project. If you deploy a smart contract and there's some bugs that are in there that result in losses for your users, then your reputation is going to be damaged, and your business idea may not be as fruitful as it could be because of those things. So essentially changing the way that developers think about how they interact with smart contracts, because when you think about what a developer is really doing, they're just changing a piece of state, right? They're saying, okay, these tokens were here in wallet A and now they're in wallet B. The actual execution that happens between those two things doesn't really matter, right? It can be fully Turing, it can be asset oriented. What is happening on the actual ledger is something is changing, right? There's a state transition. And for most operations in DeFi, you don't need all of the flexibility and all those things that Turing completeness gives you, right? It's like a subset, a domain-specific set of actions that the developer is doing most often. So if you can implement a smart contract language that really prioritizes those features, still enabling some Turing completeness if needed, but you can put guardrails in place, you can make it more intuitive and all those kind of things, then your developer will be building more things because they'll be building more and not auditing. And the applications will be more secure and easier to use, right? And from the user experience, I'm sure everybody's familiar with the crypto user experience. It sucks, basically, right? It's good for all of us that are evangelists, I guess, because we're willing to put in the time to understand, okay, I should be doing this, I shouldn't be doing this, I should make sure my keys are secure and all these things, right? I shouldn't be clicking this link because I might get a wallet drain and all that stuff. But for normal people that aren't technical or aren't passionate about the technology, the user experience is confusing and it's hard and it comes with a lot of risk for them. So another area that we've been focusing on for a long time is how to improve that user experience, right? How to make it easier to understand for users, how to make it more secure, so that you don't need a degree in computer science in order to protect the value that you have, right? And then, of course, finally, the scalability piece, which I've already touched on a few times. So I don't think I really need to talk about that again.
Thank you, Dan. We have Moquette31 who asked for the mic. Hello, Moquette. Is it a mistake, or you wanted to ask something or to say something? Moquette one time, Moquette two times. Okay. Sorry. So yeah, Robert, let's maybe take a minute to speak about sovereign chains, L2 Bitcoin, the way you see it, sharding. What's the main challenge of this in a technical terms, and how MultiversX is addressing this?
I think that we have resolved a lot of the problems Dan was speaking about. The user experience is quite different in MultiversX. It is really seamless. Everybody can use it super securely. They are just a few clicks. It is getting even as the applications are implementing everything from every feature there is from the main chain. it is even easier and easier for users. On the developer experience, I'm quite proud of what we have right now with the Space VM based on Wasm, with Spacecraft SDK based on Rust. Uh, really easy to make all the operations. You don't have to think about so much about transfers and execution. You just call some APIs or opcodes and the protocol resolves it for you. Quentin is working on Swift as a smart contract language. I'm quite happy about it. To see that working, it will be even easier to do it than on Rust. Like really, Swift is really easy to learn for everybody, and everybody loves it. It's just super seamless, and these things are already working, and we are happy about it. Some new things will come in terms of being able to use passkeys even for your accounts, for your smart accounts, uh, in order to don't even use seed phrases. So even easier to do that. In terms of the protocol, we are going to from 6 seconds block. We have a bunch of innovations coming to go down to 1 second blocks and maybe even more, even even less. We discovered a new consensus model, another one, and it's going to be fun. And all these innovations will bring even more responsiveness from the network for all the users. I think that sharding, it's just no reason not to go sharding. There is all those people, all those cons. Most of them are resolved, or everything is resolved. They People who attack sharding, they just didn't try it out how it works, and then they are just speaking their minds without seeing. But everybody in the internet is partitioning, so there is no reason to not go into sharding. And then you put all this together into a sovereign chain SDK in order to make sure that people can launch their application-specific chains or to enter into institutions and other industries where they don't necessarily want to tap into a public existing blockchain, but they want to run their own blockchain. Because blockchain, in the end, it's like the best database ever created, and they want, in the end, to use it. So there will be multiple verticals on sovereign chains, from gaming to entertainment, uh, and I see a lot of like private, uh, confidential use cases as well, from medical industries to public institutions to everything out there.
Okay, very interesting. Pantamis, I don't know if you knew Radix or MultiversX
No,
before.
no, not really. I only follow Bitcoin, so
Okay, that's what we call a maxi, but that's
yeah,
interesting. Let's finish this with L and market and
yeah,
same. What can you tell us? What's the main issues? Because I know DYDX, and as
yeah.
far as I understand what you do, it's pretty much the same, but on Bitcoin. But we know that perpetuals and derivative product are pretty expensive on DeFi. What's your way maybe to reduce the fees and to make it accessible to everyone?
Okay, so contrary to DYDX, we don't try to be decentralized for the case of the trading platform LN Markets. So lnmarkets.com, it's a trading platform for retail, and where you deposit and withdraw with Lightning, mostly if you do small amounts, and you can trade on the platform, but it is centralized. We don't advertise it as decentralized. It's just that as soon as you close your position, you can withdraw in Lightning and you don't have to wait confirmation and so on. But while you're opening your position, the funds are in our side. So this is because the issue of pooling liquidity, as I said, is not solved on Bitcoin. So this is the way we pool it, by centralizing. So that's why the products are cheap, because you are actually trading on a centralized platform. It's very, very close. It's a inverse future, which are settled in Bitcoin. So you get back some Bitcoin, you put some Bitcoin in margin. And so this is a derivative platform, which is quite classical if we remove the fact that you can deposit in Lightning mostly. But the other thing, I'm not working on this product. Actually, we are working on a new product which is called DLC Markets. So you can look at the website dlcmarkets.com. I wrote a white paper to explain the tech that solve some issue with derivative trading on Bitcoin. And so what we use is called discrete log contract, and that allow you to create some derivative products in Bitcoin, like in the Bitcoin blockchain, that are native smart contracts, kind of, because you actually don't see it's a smart contract directly, but it uses cryptographic primitive to emulate the behavior which is close to a derivative product. And so this platform, because we don't have the funds when you are taking your position in this platform, it will be over the counter desk for institutional, because that way we don't have to pool the liquidity. We're just doing some kind of clearance for them. And the use of DLC allow to just settle the project using an Oracle. So it's kind of integrating Oracle in Bitcoin. For people in retail that are interested in using DLC, there is a Bitcoin wallet called 10-10-1, which allow you to take some long or short on the Bitcoin over the Bitcoin price action using DLC. So in a kind of trustless way, you just trust the Oracle to sign the good price, so that you are able to all by yourself settle the contract and get your payout in Bitcoin without trusting your counterparty to give you that. And so that's what I'm working on currently. It's like making it self-custodial during the whole process, but because we still have issue with liquidity pooling, we only do it for institutional for now, and we will try to release it, the mainnet, at the end of the month. If all goes well. And so, yeah, I'm coding most of the cryptographic engine of this app. So I also use WASM to code it, and we do it on the browser for people to be always updated. And so, yeah, so we attempt to make to provide a kind of Lightning network, but for institutional finance in Bitcoin. So that's exciting, but yeah, still a lot of research to do.
Okay, thank you very much, Pantamis. Guys, thank you very much for this really exciting and very interesting discussion. I hope the audience managed to understand and to understand the issue and how you aim to address all of this. Robert, when Sovereign Chain?
It depends on when people are launching it. I think Onefinity, Cyber Network, Midas Chain are the ones which may get out this year.
Okay.
Runtime verification is working with the PI squared, but that's a longer project from what I saw from them, and we'll see who else comes to launch.
Okay, so let's attract them. And good luck in this. This is the most important thing. We need builders. Dan, it was a pleasure to have you this morning. Let's keep in touch for next discussions. Very exciting and very interesting discussion. It was a pleasure to meet you.
My pleasure to be here. Robert, every time we're on a Spaces, you're either in a car, on a train, at an airport. When are you going to be on a boat? I'm missing that one.
I don't know. I was like last year. I was in the boat maybe.
Okay, and yes, Pantamis, thank you very much for coming this morning. Let's just remind everyone that Pantamis is French, so I was really surprised how you can explain all of this very technical and very specific things in English.